The scene opens with a dark, intense feeling, suggesting a dramatic event just happened or is about to happen. Suddenly, many spears point upwards towards a bright full moon in a starry night sky, creating a tense atmosphere. A bright light bursts forth as someone shouts in pain, feeling a heavy impact. Orders are shouted to attack and take down the demon. As the characters are locked in conflict, a fast, dark shape moves quickly, ending with a sudden stop, and a close-up shows a character who seems injured. The injured character looks up with shock as a glowing spear is near, with rain or snow falling around them. More sounds of impact are heard as people in armor seem to be struggling against something in the dark, snowy setting. The white-haired character comes face-to-face with an armored opponent in a moment of intense confrontation, with dark, glowing figures looming above. The white-haired person unleashes a powerful dark purple energy, with glowing red eyes emerging from the darkness. The purple energy surges around the white-haired character, overpowering the armored figures caught in the blast. The purple attack continues to devastate the surrounding armored figures, who cry out in pain. After the powerful burst, the focus zooms onto the white-haired character, who seems slightly worn out but alive. The character stomps down, sending out a massive wave of purple energy, causing a large impact. The energy explodes outwards, crashing against the ground and debris. The purple explosion subsides, and an armored figure holding a weapon looks up with surprise. The white-haired character stands amidst the fading purple glow, their expression intense. A wide explosion of vibrant purple energy fills the screen, throwing fragments everywhere. The energy takes on a monstrous shape as a roar of pain or effort is heard. The white-haired person lets out a sound of exertion, feeling the strain of the power they just used. The scene shifts to a view of the dark night sky, showing giant, sinister red eyes observing from the shadows of ruined structures. The white-haired character stands tall, holding a large sword, surrounded by the lingering purple magical energy, positioned near the glowing red eyes. The character is breathing heavily, showing exhaustion after the fight. A small glimpse shows the character gripping their sword handle firmly, while the energy fades. The character looks around with a slight look of confusion or alarm, a big question mark appearing near their face. The character looks down as another figure approaches them, their own feet seeming to step onto the rugged ground. The character watches the approaching figure, who seems confident, and wonders to themselves, why? A red-haired woman confronts the white-haired person beneath the dark, stormy sky, demanding, "Why did you make that decision?" The red-haired woman, with intense eyes, asks the person before her, "Why have you made a deal with the devil?" The woman continues to press, her face filled with emotion, shouting, "Why did you betray us?" The woman screams out the name, Knox von Reinhafer, as the white-haired person stands calmly below the floating eyes and ruined castle. The focus is on the white-haired character's legs as they stand on uneven ground, with the background showing destruction. The white-haired person looks up at the floating eyes and responds with a slight smirk. "Betrayal, huh?" He confirms with a simple right, while looking down slightly, a slight smile on his face. He acknowledges the accusation. "I guess that's what it would be to you guys. However, I did not betray you." The woman seems desperate as the eyes loom over her, demanding, "Stop arguing. Just tell me." The white-haired character grins coldly, asking, "Since when were you this broken?" He looks away slightly, a look of dawning realization on his face. He reflects that the beginning of this situation was like a crash landing. A bright flash of blue light appears, signifying a major event or system activation. A system message pops up, stating that the first part of Inner Lunatic has been cleared, with a total clear count of 27. The scene abruptly shifts to a modern room where a young man sits at a messy desk, sighing in relief, saying, "Phew, all right." He notes getting many items and then checks a list of cleared quests in a game system called The Great Footprint, which he managed to complete. He expresses satisfaction. But then the focus moves to a calendar with the 6 circled, hinting at an impending date. The young man finishes his thought, "Except for the fact that I'm gonna die next month." The saying that just figures age showing scared about a dark speed of the young man, telling him not to add in the listen. The young man, Yu Chan, sits across a desk from a doctor in an office setting. A close-up shows Yu Chan's shocked and bright-eyed reaction to the news he is receiving. The scene fades to black, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. The view shifts to a bright sky with clouds, showing the title of the manhwa, Terminally Ill Genius Dark Night. The camera pans down to show a large university hospital building in the background. The scene transitions back to the young man. Yu Chan is sitting down, looking solemn while holding some papers. A doctor confirms Yu Chan's referral from Roman 20 University Hospital and asks if he has already been to 2 hospitals, stating they got the same results. The doctor suggests prescribing pain relief medication, as seen by Yu Chan's worried expression. A hand is shown taking the prescription papers from the doctor. A bottle of pills is tipped over, spilling the medication out with the sound of something dropping. The pill bottle is now on the floor next to the chair, having rolled away. Yu-chan leans back in his chair, sighing. It's already been 2 years. He looks ahead with a distant gaze while a calendar sits nearby. Trash bags are visible, suggesting a long period of neglect or illness at home, and a sound effect indicates movement or a sudden action. Yu-chan is shown clutching his hand, with another panel showing his palm covered in blood. He contemplates his fate, realizing, I really am gonna die soon, huh? He decides that dwelling on it won't change the outcome. Yu-chan reaches out to grab his phone, which lights up with a notification. The phone screen clearly shows appointment confirmations from Roman 20 University Hospital for a patient named Yu-chan. He stares at the multiple notifications for the same hospital, leaving him speechless. He reflects on his isolation, thinking, I have no one to talk to despite all that. No one reached out to me after the memory loss. He sighs deeply, admitting he can't go out in his current condition, while a panel shows his bleeding hand again. Yu-chan looks down at some papers related to late-stage cancer patient meeting and hospice options, then violently slams his hand down. He throws the papers away in frustration, a loud sound effect emphasizing his anger. The scene cuts quickly to the kitchen area, showing papers flying. He leans over his computer setup, looking stressed. Close-ups show his intense, sweating face, indicating distress. He is looking at the game inner lunatic asking if he should start a new game, and he accepts. I guess this is all I have to do. He clicks yes on the game prompt and then is asked for a player name, which he types as Carl. He ponders what kind of character he should make this time. He navigates the character creation screen. He considers 2 powerful traits, monosensitivity genius and swordsmanship and combat genius. He seems conflicted, knowing that choosing both has consequences as indicated by the system message. The system clearly warns about penalties for choosing 2 or more genius traits and shows the available neutral and negative traits, including terminally ill. Yu-chan stares blankly at the screen, frozen by the options. He laughs wryly, realizing, I'm terminally ill and so is my character, haha. He presses the confirmation button to start the game with the chosen character settings. He clicks yes without hesitation, moving forward. He is suddenly overwhelmed by a bright, intense blue light, and his expression turns to shock. The light engulfs him as he is pulled into the system. The transition continues with loud sounds, and Yu-chan is seen slumped over his desk, seemingly passed out. He wakes up suddenly, questioning, Am I dying right now? A system message confirms character creation was successful, but he thinks to himself that he wanted to die on his own terms, not like this. A notification flashes that the character's name was forcibly changed, and the synchronization process begins, showing low percentages. The synchronization stops abruptly at 71% while he is in a grand, sunlit room. Final message confirms the character's settings are complete, and he feels something as he lies in a bed. He wakes up in a luxurious bed, still wearing simple clothes, looking confused. He sits up, looking around the opulent room. He looks shocked, wiping away sweat from his brow. He looks around the lavish room, feeling a strong sense of déjà vu, and asks, this place is... He realizes he has a sense of familiarity with his surroundings, even recognizing his own feet, as he walks toward a balcony. He looks into a mirror and is stunned by his reflection. He realizes with horror that he has become the character he created, Nox, the worst villain in the game. He stares at his new appearance, his white hair and purple eyes reflecting in the light, clearly shaken. He thinks, in this damned game, I don't know why that text popped up. The narration explains Nox von Reinhafer's background, the third dark renowned family in Inner Lunatic, shown standing over 2 people who seem to be fighting beneath him on a magical circle. It continues, detailing that the family is linked to the world's worst criminal organization, Lunatic, and the Reinhafer family has always produced talented children in magic and swordsmanship. However, the text highlights that but Nox was the family's only non-talented child, shown as the young Nox looking downcast. Nox grew to resent the world because he lacked talent and consequently made a band contract with the devil. This contract led him to become the worst villain in the Inner Lunatic story as depicted by a demonic statue. The current character states, I became Nox, and questions in disbelief, is this a dream? He looks frantic, holding his head, wondering if this is real. A sound effect alerts him as a status window pops up, showing his basic information as Nox von Reinhafer, age 14. He notes the stat window and reacts with surprise, is stat window 2? Yes! He checks the stats, noting low stamina and high charm, and exclaims, wait, what's wrong with my stats? He focuses on his low stamina of 2 and then reads his long list of negative traits, including being terminally ill. He realizes with dread that he is inhabiting the character he customized earlier, recognizing the traits. He recalls being terminally ill in real life, and now the character profile shows he has only 1 year left to live. He wonders why he chose this, but then starts to understand his past self's intention. He admits, "I wanted to make a character that was like me." He wanted a character who is terminally ill and had no one to depend on. As he looks back at his past self at the computer, he confesses, "Of course I didn't know that I would become the character," as a system notification appears. A message asks if he wants to check the one unread mail in the mailbox, and he reacts with surprise. He looks around the room, and the mail starts to appear, addressing him as, "Hey, Yu-chan, no, I guess I should call you Nox now." He wonders how the sender knows his real name, Yu-chan. The mail mentions that Yu-chan is the name left by his parents, whose whereabouts he doesn't know, and then asks, "How do you know my name?" A picture of his parents holding him as a baby appears, confirming the name was from them, and he asks if the sender knows about the past he cannot remember. A message in the mail states, "You won't remember me, but I have to say this," making him wonder if the sender knows his forgotten memories. The mysterious sender says, "Long time no see," as Nox looks on, confused. Nox responds with a stunned "What?" looking toward the source of the message near the window. The sender praises him, "You did well for the last 2 years. You deserve to be here." The message concludes with a welcoming statement, "Welcome back," as a final welcome screen appears. Nox is left standing in the grand room, wondering to himself, "Welcome back." The man is looking out over a city view, wondering if he is no longer in his old world. He confirms to himself that this new place is his reality now, under a fancy chandelier. He stops himself, thinking there is no way this can be real, and clenches his fist tightly. A system message appears, stating that although he cannot tell everything about his identity, he wants to be helpful. He questions the offer of help, looking determinedly at the source of the message. The advice is to join the Eldeen Academy, which is shown as a grand building under a bright sky. The instruction continues. There he must grow his forces and try to follow the main story as closely as possible, promising the rest will be revealed later. Shocked by the sudden end to the guidance, he exclaims, "Wait, other?" Shaking his head and rubbing his forehead, he decides to try and organize his thoughts clearly now. He realizes first that he has been reborn as Nox, the final boss of the game called Inner Lunatic, which usually means death. But he thinks, even if Inner Lunatic is his new life, he still has a chance to try and get his memories back. He promises himself he will follow the main story no matter what it takes. He resolves that by following the story, he will figure out his purpose in this world and regain his lost memories. Looking determined, he thinks that for this purpose, he is even willing to become a true villain. He reflects that not much has changed from his old life as he sees a bright, glowing tree in a mystical setting. He thinks about surviving, realizing he needs to figure out what he is doing here and simply survive. He stands up in his simple room, looking slightly more composed now. He states that for the sake of survival, he is willing to become a true villain, showing a dark, intense vision of himself fighting as Nox. The vision fades and his determined face appears again. He thinks that nothing has really changed since his old life, then flashes back to 2 years before he lost his memories, showing him in an office setting, looking stressed. The flashback continues, showing him talking to someone in the office, before the scene darkens to show pills scattered around him. He remembers he was terminally ill back then. Recalls that every moment back then brought him closer to death, and he lived in constant fear of when it would happen. The only change, he muses, is the setting, though he is still in a world he knows well, looking at an old alarm clock. The scene switches back to the present, showing the richly decorated room where he woke up. He asks the system for the current date, and it replies, February 4th, 1812. He realizes this means he doesn't have much time left, lets out a breath, and says, "Now then." He then asks himself why he doesn't start his 28th clear attempt, smiling slyly. As he moves toward a door, his hand glows red as he grips the door handle. He is startled by a noise, and a system message about his traits activates. The system announces that a negative trait has been activated due to constant sickness, causing wrist inflammation level 1, demanding rest. He mutters in disbelief, "The fuck?" The chapter title appears, and the scene shifts to him looking down at his hands, which are trembling slightly as people approach. He wonders what is wrong with his body and if he is that fragile, then yells ugh, as someone bumps into him. A plate breaks loudly on the floor as he is bumped, and he shouts in pain, asking who it was. The person who bumped him is revealed to be a young maid, lying amidst the broken pieces, looking apologetic. The maid cries out, recognizing him as young Master Nox, and he notices the others reacting in fear. He clutches his wrist where it hurts, then focuses on the maid's appearance, noting her brown hair and light orange pupils, wondering if this is Rona. The maid tearfully apologizes for harming him, still on the floor. He internally recalls that he was told she was an extra who talked behind Nox's back, while the maid is shown in a flashback chatting nervously with another maid. He remembers that all he knows is that she gossiped about Nox, and now she looks truly scared. He thinks about her looking innocent despite possibly bad-mouthing Nox, but he says he will forgive her this once, smiling gently. He warns her with a chilling undertone, saying if she makes a mistake again, there will be consequences. The maid looks terrified by his look as he smiles menacingly. She quickly agrees with a tearful but relieved face while he notices the sudden quietness of the room. He wonders briefly why the staff look so surprised, realizing it's because he is supposed to be crazy, making him sigh internally about the life the original Nox led. The maid nervously asks where he is going so early, and he tells her he is heading to the practice hall. He then tells Rona to come with him, making Rona look shocked and scared that he intends to beat her. He repeats that he is going to the practice hall, looking firm. The other staff look surprised, but he specifically tells Rona to come along, causing her to panic internally about being beaten. He walks out toward the Grand Academy building, thinking about how he needs to survive, having experienced death before. He arrives outside the academy entrance with Rona following nervously. As they walk, he tells Rona that after experiencing death, he is certain he doesn't want to die and needs to get used to his new situation quickly. He tells Rona this, while she looks confused by his change in behavior, and he asks if she thinks he has no chance. He thinks that as someone who played the game 27 times, he knows all the hidden parts, including how to check his status window. He reflects on the game Lunatic, which is about angels fighting demons and the Empire, and is very popular worldwide. The special thing about the game was the many customizations available for different playstyles. He explains that while lower-ranked traits can be taken multiple times, genius traits are usually limited to one assignment per person. Using genius traits makes it easy to become the best in a certain area. However, he possesses 2 of them, which is unusual. He brings up the concept of trait penalties in the game, which happen when a trait is assigned beyond one's limit. He explains that by tricking the system's analysis, it was possible to assign 2 genius traits. The 2 traits he has are Swordsmanship and Combat Genius, which leads to peak swordsmanship, and Mana Sensitivity Genius, which boosts magic efficiency. He mentions there are many other useful traits too. As a main character perk, Insight lets him see others' status windows, and Master of Acting helps him act naturally in any situation, which he thinks will be very useful for him now. He mentions the positive traits and then turns his attention to the negative ones. He considers terminally ill to be the worst one, making him a walking hospital. He lists his negative traits: terminally ill, curse of the weak, frequent sickness, cold hands and feet, and possession. He details that those with cold hands and feet can't enter icy areas without a warming skill, and frequent sickness makes him pass out once every chapter. He sighs, concluding he has no choice but to take things one step at a time. He smiles, saying they are almost at the practice hall, and wonders if he really plans to go in. He seems resolved to focus on his first priority, getting rid of the curse of the weak. He walks toward the practice hall entrance with Rona trailing behind him, looking concerned. He reflects that first he needs to survive, and after feeling death, he is certain he doesn't want to die anymore. He remembers the flashback of dying in a hospital bed, which reinforces his will to survive. He states that in order to survive, he must get used to his new life quickly. He notes that he does have a chance because, as a player who finished the game 27 times, he knows most of the game's secrets. He mentions the status window, and a map illustration appears, reminding him of the game world. He then mentions the game Lunatic itself, showing a dark, skeletal figure with wings, representing the final boss Nox. He explains the game's premise of angels versus demons and the Empire, noting its huge worldwide fandom. He highlights the game's unique customization options that allow different players to have unique styles. He continues that lower-ranked traits could be duplicated, but genius traits were generally limited to 1 per person. Using genius traits makes reaching the top easy, and he mentions that he has 2 of them. He is walking with Rona, looking serious. He explains the concept of trait penalties for exceeding limits, but notes that by exploiting the system's analysis, he could take 2 genius traits. He details the 2 traits: swordsmanship and combat genius for peak sword skills, and mana sensitivity genius for better magic use, along with other perks like insight and master of acting. He then says the only issue is the negative traits, with terminally ill being the worst, making him a walking hospital, and he concludes he must get rid of the curse of the weak first. Thinking about it again and again, the conclusion was clear to the young man. His hands gripped the sword tightly, showing great strain. He struggled hard, his face showing immense effort just trying to hold the weapon. He finally accepted his grim reality, realizing he was in a very bad situation. This realization was like reading the end of a story right at the beginning. With a final burst of effort, the sword fell from his grasp with a clatter. The young man collapsed onto the stone floor, completely exhausted, the sword lying near him. He was worn out, breathing heavily on the ground, his exhaustion evident. He knew he couldn't even swing that sword more than 10 times because of the terrible curse of the weak. The chapter title card for the story appeared, suggesting a shift in the narrative. Even though he felt weak, he took comfort in knowing there was a good number of weapons around for practice. This availability of weapons was linked to the origin of the Rheinhafer family, a noble house known for its swordsmanship. The Rheinhafer family earned the title of the High House of the Blade and Darkness because of their sword skills that used dark magic. This power came from the commander's blade, which had been passed down through generations of family heads. The young man wondered how all this talk about swords and family history affected him directly. However, he remembered that being part of a noble family brought many perks, even if he wasn't skilled with a sword. The biggest benefit, he thought happily, was the money. The Rheinhafer family was one of the most powerful noble families in this world, meaning they were super rich. It was so rich that even the young son, who considered himself useless, had enough money to never have to work. The young master seemed pleased with this thought, thinking money was the absolute best thing. The family estate was magnificent, truly showing their immense wealth, with coins seeming to float around it in his mind. Because they were so rich, it was known that even the useless young son had enough money to never have to work a single day. He sighed, confirming his current state of being rich but weak, with his exhaustion still present. He thought that Nox's father, Tio, probably didn't care much about how Nox spent his money anyway. Plus, Nox himself wasn't the type of character to worry about money. His archetype as the youngest son of a noble family was clear. He shook off these thoughts, determined to make sure Rona finished what he asked for as he got up, moving quickly. He felt weak, thinking he couldn't even run properly. He remembered Rona telling him not to do anything weird while she was getting something ready, as he could barely stand. A few minutes before this, Rona had arrived with a tea set, ready for practice. Rona informed him that the wooden sword, towel, and water were ready for him. Young master. She seemed surprised he was actually planning to exercise, but he confirmed everything was ready and asked her to come closer. When he moved towards her suddenly, Rona freaked out, thinking he was going to hit her. Nox quickly asked her what she was talking about and then told her to bring her ear closer so he could whisper something. He gently held her ear to tell her his plan quietly. Rona finally agreed, but then was shocked when he mentioned using his money for something. She exclaimed, realizing that all the previous ideas he shared were just nonsense. Nox sharply told her to shut up and figure out the new plan, making Rona jump and agree quickly. Rona rushed away, muttering that the young master hadn't changed at all. Nox, now alone, figured that Rona would likely have what he needed by the next day. While drinking the tea Rona had brought, he focused on his main goal, finding a way to solve his curse and the stamina 2 issue. As he drank, he realized the curse was much worse than he imagined, but then he was startled by a formal greeting. He looked up in shock to see the head butler, Rodwell Diurnarch, standing over him. Nox recognized him as one of the main managers of the Rheinhafer estate, someone he couldn't just dismiss easily. Rodwell, looking serious, was holding papers in the study, showing his importance in managing the estate affairs. Rodwell was the advisor to Nox's father, Theo von Rheinhafer, the family head. Nox remembered that Rodwell was a very important figure in the household. Nox felt a wave of anxiety, realizing this meeting could be a big problem, especially since Rodwell usually ignored him. He wondered if Rodwell had noticed something was off about his strange behavior today. As they stood near the training equipment, Nox reassured himself that he had his own ways to deal with this situation while holding his cup. Rodwell sternly asked Nox why he was loitering there instead of serving the family head. Nox activated his master of acting trait and politely told Rodwell he was there to deliver news after receiving orders from the family head. Rodwell confirmed the news was that Nox was ordered to attend the family dinner that night. Nox was completely shocked, thinking, "Are you joking?" Since he barely knew anything about his own family yet. He tried to refuse telling Rodwell to inform his father that he couldn't make it tonight. Rodwell wondered why the master insisted on Nox attending, explaining that the lady of the Stillioner family had visited and was here for night training. A fierce-looking woman surrounded by intense fire was shown, representing the visiting lady. Rodwell warned that if Nox refused to attend, the family head would surely be angry. Nox sighed, accepting the order grudgingly. Rodwell paused, sensing something unusual about Nox today, especially since he usually avoided anything related to blades. He questioned Nox about why he was in the practice hall on his own. Rodwell pressed further, asking for the reason behind this sudden interest in practice. Nox then firmly told the butler to let him make something very clear. He warned Rodwell not to overstep his boundaries as a mere butler addressing his master. Nox declared that whatever he does or intends is none of Rodwell's business. He finished by stating that he alone would decide his actions. Rodwell, taken aback, quickly apologized, wondering if Nox's change in attitude meant he noticed something suspicious. The butler decided he needed to report this unusual interaction to the family head right away. Nox watched Rodwell leave, thinking that exchange was rough and unexpected. He then wondered what would happen if his possession ability suddenly activated, but quickly dismissed the thought, wondering if Rodwell was following him. He decided to forget about that for now. Nox looked slightly worried, thinking about the powerful lady of the Stillioner family who was visiting. He appeared outside, breathing heavily, finding the confrontation with the butler very taxing. He admitted to himself that he didn't expect such an event to happen and wondered about activating his possession ability before deciding to drop the thought. His expression turned to one of mild concern as he focused on the visitor. He questioned why the young lady of the Stillioner family was here. The scene shifted to the evening, showing the grand estate under a starry night sky. Inside the dining hall, some other figures were already seated, looking smugly at Nox as he entered. The twin brothers, Hartz and Alan, who seemed to dislike Nox, commented on his unexpected appearance. The twins, surrounded by maids, expressed their disbelief that Nox showed up, calling him a lost cause. Nox sat down, feeling the tension, while the twins muttered about him not even trying to do anything right. They gossiped about him making eye contact with a maid, further cementing their view of him as a failure. Nox sighed internally, feeling that he hadn't done anything wrong to deserve their scorn. Just then, maids announced that everyone else was present, and Nox looked up sharply as the family had entered. Theo von Reinhafer, Nox's father, a stern-looking man in formal wear, took his seat. Nox recognized his father, Theo von Reinhafer, the head of the family. Then, a beautiful woman with striking red hair was introduced as Talia von Stillioner, and Nox noticed her too. Talia smiled brightly, looking very welcoming to everyone. As she introduced herself, a beautiful, glowing red rose seemed to form around her. Theo announced that the young lady of the Stillioner family had requested night practice, so she would be staying at their estate. He instructed everyone to give her a warm welcome as Talia turned, basking in the light. Nox looked at Talia, realizing who she was. He knew her name from the story Talia, the hero of Inner Lunatic and the character destined to oppose the future villain, Nox. Nox's final thought confirmed his dread. She was the one who would plunge a sword into his chest in the future. The story begins at night with a grand building under a starry sky. Someone notices that Nox has finally shown up, as everyone is gathered. As the family gathers for a meal, Nox, with his silver hair and purple eyes, looks on, while a red-haired girl watches closely. The head of the family suggests they should eat now, but one of the sons immediately interrupts. This part shows the title card for the chapter, Terminal Genius Dark Knight. Meanwhile, the lavish dinner continues with rich food being served and enjoyed. Two identical-looking brothers seem confused by something, looking over at Nox. One of the brothers tells their father that it is time to decide who gets to enter Eldine Academy. Nox listens intently, knowing this decision is very important for him. The father agrees, saying it is time he makes that decision. The scene then shifts to show the magnificent Eldine Academy building. Eldine Academy is shown to be the most important place in the area called Inner Lunatic, even on an old map. The academy is known for students facing various situations and fighting demons, which is the main plot of Inner Lunatic. Nox thinks to himself that he absolutely needs to attend the academy. He knows that while keeping the story's structure, he must start gathering his own allies first. The father explains that the Eldine Academy limits each family to only 3 attendees to control the noble's power. Since his first 2 sons already took the spots, the Reinhafer family only has 1 ticket left. This puts pressure on Nox, who needs that ticket, as he looks at his more favored brothers standing proudly behind the father. Nox remembers that before he can make allies, he needs to secure the entrance ticket. He resolves internally that he will do whatever it takes to get that entrance ticket. Nox then declares that he will follow the family traditions to achieve his goal. The other brother is surprised that Nox spoke up first, while Nox gives a slight, determined smile. The brother interprets this as Nox suggesting a fight between the siblings, and the father notes Nox's unusual reaction. The father confirms that the decision will be made in a duel exactly 1 month from now in the practice hall. One of the brothers mocks Nox, telling him to stay quiet so he doesn't embarrass himself. He aggressively tells Nox that weak fools like him who never held a sword stand no chance against them. Nox calmly takes a sip of his wine, telling the arrogant brother he can boast after he actually wins. The brother presses further, questioning if Nox really thinks someone like him can win against them. Nox sees this duel as just another trial he must pass to get the ticket he needs. He decides not to listen to any more taunts and states his intention clearly. Nox declares with a strong look that he will be the one to attend Eldian Academy. The father is taken aback by Nox's sudden confidence, while one of the brothers is visibly tense. The tense brother gets angry at Nox's claim. The red-haired girl watches with amusement, saying it looks like Nox has some confidence now. She smiles broadly, clearly enjoying the sudden change in Nox's demeanor. The other brothers are completely stunned by Nox's statement. Nox realizes with dread that he has just drawn the attention of someone he really did not want to notice him. The scene shifts to a quiet night outside the mansion. Later, a subordinate reports to a different, older noble that, just as expected, something has changed in Nox. The older noble agrees, confirming the report. He admits that if he hadn't seen what happened today, he wouldn't have believed the change in Nox. He wonders what could have caused such a drastic change, even questioning if Nox was possessed by a demon. A dark, skeletal figure representing some kind of dark power or fear is shown, perhaps related to the demon idea. Despite the mystery, the older noble decides that Nox has successfully gotten his attention now. He instructs the subordinate, Rodwell, to keep watching Nox closely. The scene changes to a bright, sunny view of the academy grounds. The maids outside notice Nox practicing again in the practice hall. One maid comments that the young master is at the practice hall again, and another wonders why running is the only thing he does. The first maid questions why he is only running, while Nox is running hard under the bright sky. Nox is running intensely, trying to build up his stats. Nox wonders why he can understand everything the maids are saying, which suggests a recent change in his abilities. He then sees a system message indicating his stamina stat has only increased by 0.1. Nox is frustrated by the minimal gain and questions why he is running so hard. He realizes that his biggest problem is his low stamina, which is the condition needed to use his skill, swordsmanship, and combat genius. He recalls that the requirement is to reach a stamina stat of 4, but if one is weak like Nox, they should just be able to use it immediately. Nox reflects on his list of traits, noting the negative curse of the weak among them, and wonders how he will progress now that he has to train with this curse active. He grimaces, thinking it took him a whole month just to raise his stamina by 1.9 previously. Images relating to the curse of the weak and a dark hooded figure appear, emphasizing the difficulty of his situation. The narration explains that the curse of the weak halves the growth rate, and even after so much running, he only got 0.1 stamina. Furthermore, his terminally ill trait also halves his growth rate, meaning he needs 4 times the effort of normal people. Nox wonders why training is proving to be so incredibly hard for him. Even with all this effort, his stats are only stamina 15 and mana 30, and his terminally ill trait limits his maximum stamina to 15. He decides to worry about the stat cap later as his maid arrives with supplies. The maid respectfully delivers all the strange and expensive supplies Nox requested the day before. Nox is pleased, noting that the maid was faster than he expected, and he thinks he can finally make progress now. He looks at the items: Poison of the Three-Headed Gorgon, Dew of the Remembering Fairy, Core of the Golem, and a Rapid Stamina Growth Scroll. Nox reassures the maid that there are no issues, as he plans to use his knowledge to figure out how to use these dangerous items. He picks up a small vial, preparing to use it as the maid watches on. The maid asks why he needs all these dangerous and expensive materials, suggesting the scroll is the only useful item. Nox counters that they are only hard to handle because people don't know the right way to use them. He states that the reason the poison is dangerous is simply because people don't know how to use it correctly. Nox then takes the bottle of poison, ready to try his unique combination. He boldly drinks the purple liquid straight from the bottle. The maid screams in horror, realizing he just drank the poison of the Three-Headed Gorgon. Nox internally confirms he knows it is lethal, but he is pushing through the immediate danger. He grits the table tightly as the effects begin to kick in. A system notification appears. His health will temporarily increase by 1.5 times after consuming the poison. Another notification starts his death counter at 9:59, which shocks the maid as Nox drops something. The maid panics and says she will call the head butler, but Nox urgently tells her to wait. Nox ignores her, grabbing and eating the core of the golem, which shocks the maid further as she yells that the core is not for eating. System messages confirm he is being petrified slowly, but then a hidden piece activates as the poison reacts with the core, and Nox confirms his plan is working perfectly. He smiles, stating, "This is it." Nox explains that the core of the golem was originally used to petrify people or quickly boost defense, or to make artificial golems. The narration continues that the core is also used to create artificial golems. However, when used with the poison of the three-headed gorgon, a special effect is activated. The system notifies that the poison has been diluted and a negative trait has been removed. The notification confirms that the negative trait, Curse of the Weak, has disappeared, leading Nox to exclaim, "Perfect." Nox is ecstatic that the curse is gone, but the maid is terrified, thinking the young master might die soon from his reckless actions. Nox interrupts her panic, saying there is one more step, which causes the maid to question if he is even okay. Nox starts to pull open his shirt, looking slightly distressed or determined as he prepares for the final step. The maid screams out again, confused and worried by Nox's actions. Someone exclaimed about the young master being present. The young master was seen adjusting his shirt, while a maid looked shocked below. The maid was clearly startled as a liquid was poured from a small bottle onto the young master. The young master felt the effect, as a system message confirmed the use of the Dew of the Remembering Fairy, which removed the petrification effect from a golem's core. As the dew reacted with the golem core, the young master had an odd feeling and smiled slightly. More system notifications popped up, announcing the activation of a hidden piece and the granting of a temporary trait called Blessing of Gra. The young master thought, just as planned, the blessing would double his stamina growth rate until his stamina reached 5, and he noted there was only one item left to use. He then took out a scroll, looking determined. Upon using the scroll, another notification confirmed the use of the Rapid Stamina Growth Scroll, which also doubled his stamina growth rate. He reflected that he had eliminated the curse, and the Blessing of Growth was limiting the negative effects from his terminally ill trait, plus he used the scroll. He realized his current growth rate should be double that of most people, meaning he could increase his stamina stat much faster. Suddenly, someone rushed and hugged him tightly, making him react with surprise. The maid, embracing him, exclaimed that he suddenly took his clothes off, and she thought something was wrong with his head. He, annoyed, told her to just bring him a towel while she was scolding him for his behavior. The maid looked upset and on the verge of tears. The young master, thinking about the curse being lifted, decided he should perhaps go easy on her. He reassured her that he was fine, while she worried if he was okay without calling the head butler, and asked if he shouldn't be resting. He insisted he was fine, and when she asked what he was going to do next, he simply replied, "Run." He gave a slight smirk as he stated his simple plan. The scene transitioned to the title of the chapter/manhwa. The view shifted outside to a bright, sunny day with clouds in the sky above a grand building. The young master was shown panting outside, having clearly just run. He was running quickly across the courtyard, with the maid trailing behind, still trying to catch up. As the maid paused, she wondered just how he managed to run like that. She then questioned why someone so weak would accept a match against his brothers. A girl with striking red hair, leaning on a railing, was observing the scene. The maid, named Emma, told her lady that staring at the youngest son of Reinhafer was rude. The red-haired girl, Talia, disagreed, pointing out he doesn't even wield a sword and just runs around. Talia continued, complaining that even though the other knights of Reinhafer offered to teach him, he refused all of them. Talia concluded that in a month, he would just get beaten up, as 2 other men watched on. She wondered why this bothered her so much, saying she couldn't stand it. Talia abruptly decided she needed to go and told Emma she would be right back. Emma was confused when Talia suddenly left. Talia rushed out determinedly, ready to confront the young master. The setting showed the bright outdoors where the young master was. The shadow of Talia fell over the pavement as she approached the young master. Talia cheerfully greeted him, introducing herself. The young master looked up at her, thinking internally about why she was looking for him. He coolly asked her what she wanted after recognizing her name. Talia was taken aback by his cold attitude, wondering if it was just surprise at her beauty. She tried to convince herself he was just shocked by how beautiful she was, as she glowed with a rose-like aura. She then got serious and asked him if he was certain he could beat his brothers, and if that was why he accepted the match. The young master maintained a stoic look as she questioned him. She further pressed, asking if he really thought he had a chance just by running around like that. The maid, Emma, who had followed, offered to help him if he asked. Talia, beaming confidently, reiterated her offer of help. The young master curtly declined, saying he had no interest and told her to get lost, which shocked Talia. Talia became angry, exclaiming how dare he treat her that way when she was offering help. Emma panicked, shouting about how rude he was, saying girls would hate that attitude. Talia angrily told him to just do it his way and then turned away with an ugh. The young master winked at her back as she walked away. He and the maid stood there, with the maid remarking that he really had no idea. The young master sighed, thinking this whole situation just complicated things. He used his insight ability on Talia, showing her stats. Talia von Stillreiner, 14, human, fire element with stamina 6, mana 3, luck 5, will 7. Her traits included positive ones like hero admiration and great combat talents, but also negative ones like inferiority complex, confirming she had crazy talent despite her internal struggles. He noted that her stamina stat of 6 was incredible compared to the average male's 4. He imagined scenes of power, comparing her potential, though maybe not to the continent's 3 sword masters. He also pictured the potential of one of the 4 great mages, seeing Talia's power displayed with glowing swords and blue energy. The vision shifted to a cloaked figure holding a staff with a glowing crystal, suggesting great magical potential. He thought that at least she had the potential to reach their level. He mused that with her fire attribute, she should be able to kill a couple of demons. He recalled that the fire magic she uses eventually awakens to white flames, which is used to burn the demonized Nox in the future. Talia was shown engulfed in bright, powerful orange and red flames, radiating intense energy while holding her sword. He realized that if he could make Talia his ally now, the future story would change significantly. He saw an image of a chessboard with a fallen black king and a white knight standing over it, symbolizing a major shift in power or strategy. He needed to find ways to follow the original story but avoid his own death, and wondered if he could even be on good terms with the person destined to kill him. A month later, the young master appeared somewhat tired or contemplative as he stood indoors. He was pondering the difficult question of whether he could befriend the person who was meant to kill him in the original timeline. The setting showed a grand room bathed in morning light. A month later, Talia entered the room with a confident stride. She looked serious as she stood there. Someone was praising Talia, saying she learned so quickly, which was expected from the talent of the Stillreiner family. Talia looked down, thinking about the talent of the Stillreiner family. She thought about what it meant to be a knight. Never be consumed by greed, remain frugal, and sacrifice for the greater good. Below her intense gaze, a large, impressive wooden gate stood glowing in the light. Talia stood tall, holding her sword, while someone else was shown crouched below her. The sword of the person below broke, and Talia seemed to have jumped, with a single word escaping the crouched figure, "Sister." Talia looked down sadly at the ground where the broken sword lay. She clutched the hilt of her own sword, speechless. She wondered to herself if it was possible for her to become a knight. Her thoughts then focused on the knight's ideals, being frugal and sacrificing oneself for the greater good, overlaid with shining golden armor and swords. She also considered that to be a proper knight, one must learn the way of the sword in form. She let out a breath, wondering if it was really possible for the young master to beat his brothers who trained for years just by doing cardio exercises. She concluded with a sigh that she didn't believe it was possible, looking up at a dark, starry sky. The story jumped to the next day, showing a bright exterior view of the estate. People were gathered outside on the stone courtyard, waiting. The young master stood facing someone with his supporters, including the maid Emma, watching from the front. On a balcony above, Talia stood with several important-looking adults. A close-up showed one of the women on the balcony, identified as Thea's first wife, Facilia. Facilia addressed a man with glasses, identified as Rodwell. Rodwell sat with his arms crossed, looking stern as Facilia asked what he thought would happen to the duel. Rodwell seemed to be reacting silently, perhaps in thought. Rodwell cleared his throat and asked everyone to pay attention as those on the balcony watched the proceedings. Another man on the balcony announced that the official duel to decide who gains the right to enter Eldine Academy would soon begin. The young master and one of his brothers stood ready with swords drawn, and he looked intensely focused as the duel was about to start. A burst of light and sound surrounded the area as the duel was declared to begin. The young master aggressively swung his sword down towards his brother, who raised his sword to meet the attack. The people gathered in the grand hall were discussing the upcoming duel, with one person asking Rodwell for his thoughts. Patriarch, a stern-looking man, sat observing as another man stood beside him. The man with glasses stated that considering young Master Alan's past wins, he was sure Alan would win the fight. The patriarch just smiled, confirming he already thought so, while an elegant woman looked on with suspicion. She seemed concerned, wondering if the patriarch expected something different from the usual outcome. She remembered how much young Master Nox had changed lately, but still, she didn't believe he could win against Alan. The thought of Nox winning felt outrageous and impossible to her. Someone else spoke, mentioning that they too once followed the path of a knight alongside the patriarch. They explained that the way of the blade can be fancy sometimes, but often, it is very simple. The level of a knight is decided by how long they trained and truly thought about their art. There was only one way for someone who was behind to suddenly flip everything and make their superior kneel before them. That way was through overwhelming talent, a wall that seemed impossible to climb. The question then arose, was young Master Nox born with such amazing talents? The man with glasses hesitated, admitting the possibility wasn't zero, especially if Nox carried the Rhine-Hafer bloodline. If he had the Rhine-Hafer blood, there was a chance that the youngest was born with the talent of a sword emperor. Meanwhile, Nox checked his status, noting his swordsmanship and combat genius trait was inactive. He cursed his bad luck, even though he had a high luck stat, feeling like his luck was actually negative. He realized he couldn't even reach a stamina stat of 4 after all his hard work. Suddenly, his trait effects activated, and his stamina stat increased by 0.1 twice. Now, his stamina was 3.8 and his mate approached him, slightly out of breath. She asked if he really had to keep making her run along with him. Nox quickly replied that it wouldn't be fun otherwise and jokingly implied who would take care of him if she didn't. Nox then teased her, saying he thought he heard her curse him in her mind when she paused for a second. The maid, caught in the act, looked panicked and claimed she bit her tongue instead of saying anything bad. Nox laughed, realizing she must have good stamina too, finding it upsetting that a maid had a better starting stamina than him after his month of training. It was already evening, and the maid reminded Nox that the duel was tomorrow and he should rest. Nox sighed, thinking he didn't have time to rest. His older brother, Alan, called out to him, asking why he didn't just give up since he was the shame of the family. Alan mockingly said he couldn't beat up his younger brother too hard, but Nox replied that Alan didn't look like he wanted him to give up. Alan agreed, admitting he wanted to impress the daughter of the Stillreiner family and believed Nox would help him. Nox looked troubled, saying he wasn't sure if that was a good choice. Then Alan checked Nox's stats showing a stamina of 8. Alan then declared that he couldn't defeat Nox using normal ways, so they would start the duel for the Eldeen Academy admission ticket. He warned them both to accept the result, as objections would not be allowed. Nox felt nervous, knowing if he lost here, everything would be over, and he wouldn't be able to find the memories he needed to uncover who sent him the letter before his 1-year grace period ended and he died. He gripped his sword tightly, realizing that winning this duel was the only way to secure his future in the family and continue his search. The announcement was made, and the dueling commenced with the spectators watching from the balcony. The family matriarch thought it was pathetic, saying she was looking forward to seeing how Nox had changed, but this was all he could do. She wondered if she should stop the duel because if they kept going, young Master Nox would take a long time to recover. The patriarch considered the talents of Alan and Hearts, noting they were good, but lacking compared to his first son, Garen, who had the ability to dominate his opponents with overwhelming power, like the Dark Sword of Domination. Just as someone moved to stop the fight, Nox's stamina increased by 0.1 and his trait, swordsmanship and combat genius, activated. Alan explained that Nox had lost his mind and questioned if he was trying to activate a skill, which was Hour of the Genius. Nox experienced the skill activating, realizing that a genius and a talented person have different hours of the day, and this was the genius's time. For Nox, everything started to look slow, perceiving the enemy's movements as slow, which was different from just moving faster himself. He knew it would be hard to fully use this skill, but since his trait was activated, he felt confident. Nox declared, "It's over," as he prepared his final move. Alan, seeing Nox's determined look and skill activation, was shocked and asked if Nox had lost his mind. Nox grinned, activating his skill, Hour of the Genius, which made everything appear slow to him. A massive, glowing clock-like pattern appeared around Nox as he focused. He held his sword, glowing with golden light, feeling the shift in time. He recalled hearing that a genius and a talented person experience time differently. This was the genius's time, where the enemy's movements seemed slow, and Nox felt he was moving faster in comparison. He knew it was hard to use this skill perfectly, but with his trait active, he was sure of the outcome. Nox gripped his sword, knowing it was over. He launched an attack, moving through the slowed environment. The strike landed with great force, pushing Alan back dramatically. Nox's mother looked on, calling his previous performance pathetic and thinking that the last child of the family to enter Eldian Academy would be her son, Alan. She mused that she was looking forward to seeing Nox change, but felt this was all he could do, and considered stopping the duel because Nox might take a long time to recover if they continued. Nox, feeling the blows, thought about how his brother Alan and Hearts were talented, but not as much as Garen, the first son, who had the dark sword of domination skill. Nox gasped as his stamina increased again, and Alan, looking tired, was about to say, "Right, let's stop that." Nox interrupted, saying, "If I lose here, it's all over. I need to find my memories and the person who sent me the letter, or I will die after the 1-year grace period." As Nox gripped his sword, the referee asked if they were ready to begin. With a shout of "Begin!" Nox immediately attacked with a powerful upward swing. The force of the blow sent Alan staggering back. Nox followed up quickly, hitting Alan hard. Alan cried out as he was struck and sent flying, the impact echoing through the hall. Nox paused his attack, chuckling and complimenting Alan's defense, though Alan was clearly overwhelmed. Alan realized that relying on normal methods wouldn't work against Nox now. Nox thought to himself that this was the only consistent thing about the crazy inner game. If he lost, he gave up everything, but if he won, he could have everything. His brother, Alan, asked if Nox had hit his head too many times. Nox laughed, suggesting Alan would feel better after a few more hits, and then struck him again. Alan groaned in pain, realizing how useless it was to worry about how Nox had changed. Nox's mother watched with a scornful look, thinking, "The last child of this family to enter Eldian Academy will be my son," as Nox surged forward with power. She called him pathetic, thinking that Alan and Hearts' talents were good, but not as good as Garen's, who mastered the dark sword of domination. Nox, panting slightly after the exchange, stood ready, wondering who the true successor of the family's power would be. The patriarch sighed, seeming resigned, and was about to intervene, saying, "Right, let's stop they." But Nox activated something again, his stamina increasing by 0.1, and his trait, swordsmanship and combat genius, activated. Nox laughed maniacally, and Alan demanded if he had lost his mind. Nox activated his skill, Hour of the Genius, flooding the area with golden light and clock-like patterns. The world seemed to freeze around Nox as he looked down, his eyes sharp. He noted that a genius and a talented person experience time differently, and this was the genius's time. In this state, everything looked slow to him, a skill that made the enemy's movements appear slower while he moved faster. He acknowledged it was hard to use this skill perfectly, but with his trait active, he knew this was the end for Alan. Nox focused on his grip on the sword, enveloped in the golden energy of his skill. He was certain that with this power, he would win this duel. The spectators watched in awe and confusion as the younger brother unleashed this incredible power. Nox, with a confident smile, prepared to finish the fight. He thought about the skill, the Hour of the Genius, which made him perceive the world differently. Under the effect of the skill, everything seemed slow to Nox. He moved with incredible speed through the distorted time. He understood that making the enemy look slow and moving faster were two different things. Because his trait was active, he was confident. He declared that it was over for Alan. Nox prepared the final strike, his hand firmly on the sword hilt. He brought the sword down in a decisive motion. Alan was completely outmatched by the speed. Alan looked on in shock as the attack came towards him. The sword descended, shining brightly. Nox looked down at his opponent with a triumphant smirk. He knew for sure, "I will win this duel." The clash of swords echoes, showing a powerful impact as one sword is stopped by another. Someone lets out a grunt and is clearly struggling, ending up close to the ground. A hand grips the hilt of a sword tightly after the intense moment. Despite the struggle, the main character thinks to himself that the fight is actually fun, but he also wonders what happened to surprise the other person so much. He reminds himself that he cannot relax even though things feel good, because his special skill only lasts for 5 minutes. He must finish everything quickly within this short time limit. A glowing hourglass appears, symbolizing the time limit ticking down for his powerful ability. He straightens up, looking serious, feeling that he was holding back a bit before. He then tells his older brothers that it was getting boring and asks them to come at him all at once. With a slight smile, he repeats his request to his older brothers, asking them to attack together to speed things up. One of the brothers is shocked by this bold request, exclaiming in surprise. Nox then addresses his father, requesting permission to fight both brothers at the same time. He stands ready with his sword, waiting for his father's decision. The father shows a thoughtful expression, seeing the change in the young man. Another character is shocked by the request, while the father observes that Nox's energy has shifted. The father decides it is still worth watching. The father finally agrees, permitting the 2-on-1 spar while the brothers are inwardly angry about being humiliated. The father gives the command to begin, while the mother figure is also shocked by the unfolding events. The spar officially starts, with Nox standing ready against his 2 approaching brothers in the training ground. The brothers immediately rush forward to attack Nox from both sides. One brother mutters about how Nox dared to humiliate them in front of their father, but Nox smiles confidently, holding his sword ready. Nox holds his sword firmly in front of him, prepared for the dual attack. The attacking brother warns the other to get closer to Nox's left side as Nox yells for them to be prepared. Swords meet with loud sounds as the brothers strike. The fight becomes a flurry of motion as Nox expertly defends against the 2 simultaneous attacks. The sound of blows landing is heard as the clash continues. One brother yells at the other to stick to the plan and attack Nox's left side. The other brother screams at him to shut up as Nox seems to be overwhelmed for a moment. Nox's purple aura flares as he concentrates, clearly powering up or using his ability. A system message appears, stating that due to the Hour of the Genius effect, the proficiency of the low-grade swordsmanship of the Dark family has increased, making Nox happy that his skill level has gone up. Nox smiles, noting that his improved skill now lets him see the sword movements clearly. Nox unleashes a powerful counterattack against his 2 brothers. One of the brothers cries out in pain as he is hit hard. The impact sounds intense, and one brother yells in pain. The fight seems to have ended quickly, leaving the spectators upstairs silent and watching. The red-haired girl watching from above gasps in shock. She yells Nox's name, while another character wonders how Nox, after the humiliation he caused, could change so much. The onlookers on the balcony look at Nox with curious expressions, while one of the brothers seems defeated and looking down, wondering how the family's shame could be turned around so fast. The defeated brother is shown looking distraught, while the spectators are murmuring. Nox approaches his brother and reminds him that he had told them not to get distracted during a spar. The other brother watches Nox, who is surrounded by the still standing but defeated brothers. An exclamation of shock comes from the audience as Nox moves with speed. Nox lands a decisive blow on one of his opponents. The scene shows a rapid exchange of blows resulting in hits against both brothers. Despite the high stakes of this spar, Nox is smiling because he is enjoying just wielding the sword now. He confirms that simply using the sword itself is fun. Nox's action ends with a final, powerful move. The skill effect seems to disappear, and the spectators, including the father and the red-haired girl, look stunned by the sudden outcome. The father looks impressed while one of the brothers is in disbelief, saying it's impossible. A brother screams in agony as he is thrown back. Nox internally curses that it ended so quickly. The 2 brothers are left defeated on the floor while the skill effect fades away. The system confirms that the Hour of the Genius skill has ended, and Nox is shown panting heavily as he recovers in the bright light. Nox stands tall, looking down, realizing the fight is over already. He confirms to himself that it is finished, looking a bit drained. 2 women, possibly the mother and another lady, yell out names like Hearts and Alan, seemingly concerned or shocked. Nox casually asks if the victor has been decided, and someone quickly confirms it is so. Someone announces that the victor is young Master Nox von Riehafer as the crowd on the balcony looks on. Defeated brothers are frustrated, while Nox remains composed. One of the brothers drops his sword onto the ground with a soft sound. The sword clatters to the ground as Nox lets go of his own. The father watches Nox with a knowing, satisfied look. Nox appears slightly nervous or perhaps relieved, wiping a bead of sweat. A sound effect plays as Nox clutches his chest, breathing heavily. Nox declares that he will take his leave now. He walks towards the exit of the training area. The red-haired girl looks determined and starts to move towards Nox. As Nox walks away, the red-haired girl thinks she needs to catch up to Nox right away. She looks incredibly shocked and alarmed. The panel focuses on her intense reaction as she prepares to move. The title card for the manhwa appears. The scene shifts to a beautiful sunset outside a grand building, with a loud coughing sound erupting. Nox is shown leaning over, catching his breath, with heavy huffs outside the main hall. He looks down at his hand in horror, seeing blood, realizing he used the skill for a bit too long. Nox reflects that his skill, Hour of the Genius, has a major drawback when used past its duration. The system window shows the penalty, a permanent decrease in lifespan by 2 days and 17 hours due to the recoil status. He knows this is the worst debuff because it shortens his life and makes him sicker, which is bad since he is already terminally ill. He is relieved the recoil wasn't visible to others. Nox worries that if people knew about the recoil, his chance to enter the academy would be gone, emphasizing how hard he worked for it. Then someone approaches him. Nox looks up, slightly startled, as someone speaks to him. He looks uneasy as the person calls out to him. The red-haired girl rushes over, asking him if he got hurt. She urgently asks again if he was injured during the spar. Nox mutters under his breath, "Damn it," looking stressed. He clenches his hand tightly, clearly bothered by the injury he sustained from the skill's recoil. Talia realized with a shock that she had been found out, and she was worried it was by none other than herself. Now, the main character had a serious worry. He really did not want Theo to find out about the skills rebounding. Theo looked at the other person, shocked that they managed to win a fight against siblings even with such a weak body. He admitted he misunderstood the person completely. The red-haired girl smiled softly, realizing she had completely gotten the wrong idea about him. She looked at him with wide, slightly blushing eyes, thinking about what she had seen. The scene focuses on her determined stance as she takes this realization in. She thought back over the last month, remembering everything. What she remembered was that Nox never even once used a real sword during that time. The very first day, all she saw was him swinging a wooden sword very poorly. The fact that someone like that could win made her think he must be naturally talented. This realization made her determined to ask him how he awakened such a talent. She also really wanted to know how he trained that talent so well, but then she remembered how he looked when he was all alone after the duels ended. She wondered what was wrong with him when he was alone, showing such pain. She questioned why he was in such a terrible state, looking stressed. She wondered if perhaps he didn't completely crush his siblings with his genius and talent after all, despite the rumors. Nox looked calm and collected, thinking to himself that he was definitely not the good-for-nothing that the rumors made him out to be. He thought that he simply worked really hard so he could win no matter what happened. Meanwhile, Talia looked on with a serious expression, dust and debris flying around her. Her focused posture showed she was deeply affected by this new understanding. After a moment of coughing, Nox asked if she was okay, as Talia approached him with concern. Talia tried to reach out, but Nox sharply pulled back and told her not to touch him. Nox, feeling a bit awkward, admitted that he had been obsessed with gaming for the last 2 years, which made it hard for him to get along with people. He was embarrassed by his past behavior, especially since Talia was a character type that might get very upset with him in the game's world. He struggled with how to respond to her sudden change of heart. Talia apologized for misunderstanding him and seemed genuinely sorry for how she perceived him before. She asked him what, when he seemed confused by her apology. Talia explained that she heard his body was weak from birth, and that was why she thought he only did stamina training. She apologized for misjudging him. She brought up that Emma said people could make mistakes like that, showing some empathy. Nox internally wondered how he should react to her honesty, noting she was just as straightforward as in the game. Nox observed her, thinking that even though he knew she had the spirit of a knight, she was still the daughter of a proud duke family. He figured it must be hard for her to admit she was wrong to others. Then, Nox told Talia that if that was what she thought, she should please not tell anyone about him bleeding. Talia quickly agreed, saying, "Oh, of course, I won't." Nox told her he probably didn't need to worry about others finding out about that matter anyway. Talia told him to keep his promise as she walked away with a bright, almost glowing look against the grand building. As she looked back, a bright light enveloped her, and she seemed thoughtful about the situation. This chapter title card appeared, showing the name of the manhwa. The scene then shifted to a dark, starry night above the grand estate. Inside, an older man with silver hair and glasses sat thoughtfully, saying it seemed his guess was correct. He asked the man standing before him what he thought about Nox's talent. The man replied that at first, he couldn't understand why Nox let himself get beaten up. However, he believed that for children his age, including all the other young masters, Nox was the best. He then added that he still felt Nox was hiding some talents from them. The silver-haired man instructed his subordinate to monitor all of Nox's movements and just observe whatever he did. The subordinate agreed immediately. The older man wondered if Nox had enough talent to inherit the supreme black sword. The subordinate confirmed he would do his best. The scene then showed a system notification pop up. The notification stated that the tutorial quest was completed, and the first fight was won, which would result in rewards. Nox realized this was a world where the game-like system was still active, and he was getting rewards. He thought this was a jackpot because he had been running for a whole month just to increase his stamina by 2 points. He felt they should have given him these rewards earlier. But then, he looked at the status window, realizing that the stat he needed to invest these points in was not stamina, He focused on the luck stat, realizing that in the game Inner Lunatic, luck was the most valuable stat because it wasn't a stat that could just be increased with hard work. He decided to check its value right away. A system box appeared, showing that a benefit for mass clear 27 times had been given. He received a random gacha voucher and a one-time use skill confirmation voucher. He noted that the benefit system was still working, which was a relief, and decided to do the gacha right away. Seeing the gacha machine in person felt strange to him. He recalled that when his luck stat was at its highest in the game, the chance of getting an intermediate rank or above was 95%, probably. He explained that basic rank and below was white, intermediate rank was silver, and advanced rank would be gold, with the highest rank being rainbow. Pleaded internally to get gold and above, and then the gacha machine activated with a bright light. The machine dispensed a glowing golden scroll, which he caught with both hands. The system identified the rank, and he was congratulated on obtaining an advanced trait called Supreme Ruler's Awe. He was ecstatic, realizing it was a super jackpot, even though it was a debuff skill. The skill information showed that Supreme Ruler's Awe reduced the stats of anyone with a lower total stat value by 20%. He was still happy because he had another reward waiting, the skill confirmation voucher. He already knew what skill he would get from this voucher, one of the hidden pieces obtainable in the Reinheifer family. He needed that specific skill to deal with Theo, who would soon gather all the siblings at the estate. He realized it was almost time for Theo to return to the Reinheifer estate since the Eldeen Academy graduation ceremony finished. He needed to find the hidden piece and handle Green, the second son who was currently traveling to train as a knight, meaning there was no time to rest. The fortunate thing, he thought, was that he probably didn't need to worry about Talia anymore. He was sure she wouldn't break her promise, and there was no reason for her to approach him either. This was what he thought last night. But now, back in the present, he was facing Talia again inside the lavish hallway of the estate. He asked her, "Didn't we settle everything yesterday already?" Nox sighed and asked her, "What do you want from me?" Talia looked up at him, demanding, "Tell me." She urgently asked, "How did you become so strong so quickly?" A woman with fiery red hair loudly asks someone how she can get stronger. She stands there looking very intense about her request. The person she is asking, a boy with silver hair, looks rather calm and stares back at her. The silver-haired boy points out that she has been secretly watching him train for a whole month. The red-haired woman looks shocked by this accusation. She stammers in surprise upon realizing he knew she was watching him train secretly. She then demands at least to spar, or at least for him to tell her how he trains, but he quickly dismisses her plea. As the boy thinks, a shadowy figure, perhaps a memory or an inner thought, looms behind him. He remembers that a character named Talia always wanted recognition from her sister. Then he tells the woman that before asking things like that, she should focus on her own talents. The red-haired woman drops down to her knees, looking defeated, while the silver-haired boy stands tall over her. The boy continues to advise her, suggesting she first consider her own talents before asking for training secrets or demanding a fight. He tells her she should think about the talent she already has first. The red-haired woman looks up at him, clearly stunned by his words. The boy sighs internally, realizing he has never comforted anyone and doesn't know what to say to her. He tells her not to compare herself to others, delivering the advice with a serious look. The boy then walks away, leaving the woman behind. The woman watches his retreating figure in shock as he leaves the room. She looks quite flustered after his sharp departure. He mutters to herself that he just left. Outside, the silver-haired boy sighs, wondering if the woman will even follow him now. He concludes that there is no need for her to follow him. He thinks about letting her see him earn the hidden pieces, even if she might end up killing him later. Meanwhile, a group of people, including the patriarch, are gathered outside a barn. The title of the story, Terminally Ill Genius Dark Knight, is displayed. The boy arrives at what he recognizes as the Reinheifer family's barn. This barn is famous for raising the best horses on the whole continent. He greets the patriarch, who tells everyone they are all there because they know why they were called. The patriarch announces that from now on, they must choose the horse they will be with forever. The silver-haired boy, Knox von Reinheifer, the winner of the recent duel, is told he can choose first. He thinks to himself, "I knew it," with a slight smirk. It's finally time, and the scene shifts to focus on a magnificent white horse. The narration explains that horses are considered the holiest animals in both the continent and a Reinheifer family. It continues to explain that if one decides to become a mage or a knight, they must choose a horse young. The purpose is to have the horse as a lifelong companion. The Eldeen Academy teaches horse riding, and since the later parts of the game involve big wars, one must raise a young horse in case their current one dies. Plus, Transportation magic is too expensive, making horses a very important way to travel, so choosing the best horse is necessary. Looking at the horses, Nox smiles slightly, realizing he needs the best horse. The Patriarch officially tells Nox, the winner of the duel, that he can choose first. The Patriarch adds that he will only give Nox one chance to choose. Other members of the family look on with thinly veiled jealousy. Nox steps forward, while the Patriarch watches him with an expectant look. The Patriarch wonders which horse the youngest one will choose. Nox walks toward the horses near the fence. He observes the cute, standard-looking horses and says they are pretty cute, good horses. However, he states that he is looking for something else and spots a particular horse. He sees the horse he was looking for, a dark gray or almost black one. Nox approaches the horse he has set his sights on, while another horse seems to watch him. He declares, "I will choose this one," as the dark horse begins to react. He looks back with a knowing smile as the dark horse stands tall. The others react with shock at his choice. The Patriarch stares at Nox, clearly taken aback by the selection. The Patriarch offers him another chance, gesturing with his hand. Nox considers the offer for another chance while the dark horse seems nervous. The onlookers think Nox is making a very bad decision. Nox, however, uses his insight and activates a system window to check the target's stats. The system begins loading the target's information around the dark horse. The basic information pops up. The horse is of the rare obsidian species with a dark element, and its rank is already high. The system also shows that most summoned creatures are ranked, and depending on growth, they can surpass their initial rank. Nox notes that this means the horse can reach the highest rank, which is great for him. He then thinks that plus, it's an obsidian, a very rare kind. The obsidian name refers to a type of igneous rock, and the narrator mentions that if the Patriarch knew this, he would have taken this horse himself. Nox, however, looks a bit troubled, realizing the horse currently has a negative trait that makes it less tempting. The Patriarch looks on skeptically. He admits that although the horse has amazing potential, it's not very tempting right now because of its negative trait. The stats show several positive traits are currently inactive due to a debuff, and the negative trait is expected death, with only a few days left on the timer. Nox finds this death expectation trait more annoying than his own terminal illness trait. Despite this, Nox decides firmly, "I won't change my mind. I'll go with this horse." He reassures himself that with his knowledge, he can definitely save the horse. The Patriarch and others look on, confused about why he would choose such a flawed creature. The Patriarch wonders if Nox is projecting his own condition onto the horse, seeing him as an emotional and weak person. The Patriarch thinks Nox is just emotional and weak, calling the choice a disappointment. He warns Nox that he hopes he won't regret that decision. Nox seems unaffected by the Patriarch's disappointment as other family members watch. Some other young masters express shock at the choice, exclaiming "Father." As they address the Patriarch, Nox wonders if his decision truly was that disappointing, but someone tells him to please choose a horse and then to choose a name for it. Nox names the horse Rodwell. Nox strokes the horse, naming it, and then calls out "All right." A name. He contemplates the name he chose. Nox decides on the name Carl instead, saying, "I'll go with Carl." He kneels down to bond with the horse. He thinks the name Carl is meaningful because it's the name he used when clearing the inner lunatic stage. The scene transitions to the evening light over the family estate. Nox has brought Carl, the dark horse, into his room, placing him on the grand bed. Nox thinks to himself that he can't show others what he is about to do, so he brought the horse to his room, and now the horse is inside. He looks at Carl, noticing the horse's eyes look determined to live. He feels a connection because he, too, is struggling to live a bit longer. He realizes the horse looks determined to live just like him, struggling to survive. Nox thinks he guesses the horse is also struggling to live a bit longer. Suddenly, Nox calls out Rona, knowing someone is nearby, and warns them that if they don't answer, he will do something. Nox calls out Rona's name, telling her he knows she is out there. Rona is caught in the act, having fallen while perhaps trying to clean or spy, exclaiming, "Oh." Rona quickly responds, "I'm here. I'm here," admitting she was caught red-handed, and Nox asks why she falls down every time. Nox tells her to look after the horse, commenting on having a horse in the bed. Rona reacts in shock to the horse's presence. Rona says she is the one who has to clean this mess, but Nox tells her, with a cheerful smile, to do her best because the horse is sick. Rona hesitantly agrees, saying, "All right, I'll look after him," as she looks at the sad-looking horse. Nox smiles, finding the situation amusing, thinking what happens next will be quite a shock to others. The narrator wonders if Rona will be able to deal with this situation. Rona asks the horse, "Your name's Carl. Are you hungry?" Rona reaches out toward the horse, now left alone with the responsibility of the sick, room-welling horse. 3 days passed quickly. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the big building outside. The maid, Rona, was crying loudly, shouting that Carl, the horse, was dead. The young master looked on, sighing, thinking that Rona was sad because Carl had left the world. He admitted that Rona had put a lot of effort into taking care of Carl, and he felt a little bad for her. However, the young master already knew that something like this would happen. He knew in his heart that Carl could not be saved anymore. He then told the crying maid to stop crying because she was distracting him, telling her to get up. The maid sniffled, protesting that Carl was dead, but the young master firmly told her not to worry, as he would return to his side again. Rona was confused by his strange words and wondered if something was wrong with his head. The young master then told her to get behind him immediately and smiled strangely. He pulled out a scroll, which made Rona wonder what that scroll was. The young master placed his hand on the scroll, which had strange markings on it. He decided that if he infused his mana into this scroll, something might happen, and a bright purple flame surrounded him. As he poured his energy into the scroll, Rona reacted with shock. The energy flow caused some sound effects around them. Rona was amazed and asked if the young master knew how to use mana, noting that it was illegal for someone under 15 unless they were from the imperial family. The young master groaned, feeling he couldn't control his mana well, and told Rona to focus, asking for one more try. He warned her sternly that if she kept distracting him, Carl would die a second time, and it would be her fault. Rona gasped in fear, but the young master insisted he needed to focus. He continued channeling his power, explaining that he was still someone who hadn't awakened his trait called Genius of Mana Detection. He then explained that using mana under 15 was illegal in the Empire unless you were from the imperial family. A majestic figure in royal regalia was shown, representing the imperial family. Because of this rule, the descendants of the imperial family were much better at magic compared to others who started learning later. The young master resolved that the only thing he could do right now was to pour as much mana as possible into the scroll. He concentrated hard, continuing to channel the energy. He felt a faint energy coming from his palms and realized that this energy was mana. He looked determined as the magical energy surged around him. He gave a slight, dark smile, finding the situation interesting, and decided to use the one-time use skill confirmation voucher. He thought to himself that he must not make any mistake because the magic he was about to use was black magic. A system message confirmed that the skill, Book of the Dead Necromicron one-time use had been obtained, and this magic was black magic. Another message popped up, stating that the target, Carl, could be revived as an undead. A final prompt appeared, asking if he wanted to use this magic. The young master sat down, focusing the purple energy toward the scroll as Carl's body was suspended above. Powerful magical sounds surrounded the activation of the spell. The title screen for Terminally Ill Genius Dark Knight appeared, followed by text explaining the two types of undead in the game Inner Lunatic. The first type of undead are beings brought back to life with black magic or dark mana. The second type are those brought back to life without an ego. The second type are reborn as a stronger being and remain blindly loyal to their master, almost to a fault. The problem, however, was that there was only one family known for reviving corpses as undead. That family was the Dark Magic family, the Marva's family, while the young master's family, Reinhafer, was a night family, even though it was also a dark family. The mysterious hooded figure from the explanation held a Book of the Dead, which described this process. The hooded figure continued to explain that players not belonging to the Marva's family shouldn't be able to use their skills at all. This thought led the figure to question why they could use the skill. The young master, now revealed, knew the answer, the item he got from the voucher. He remembered he used a one-time use skill selection voucher and the item he got from it. That item was a Necromicron, also known as the Book of the Dead. As he held the book, he felt his mana running out, and he cursed under his breath. The dark magic surged with power as he fought to finish the spell. The energy erupted violently as the young master knelt down amidst the swirling dark magic. The power intensified, and the undead horse started to take form in the chaos. The young master gritted his teeth, focusing despite the strain. Rona shouted an alarm for the young master. He silenced her with a quiet SHH, urging her to wait just a little more. He let out a small cry as the dark energy washed over him from the exertion. He choked, clearly pushing himself too hard. He realized his mana was running out and cursed again, pushing his hand onto the circle. His determined purple eye stared forward through the powerful magic. The undead horse was clearly materializing in a fit of dark and bright blue energy. The horse let out a loud, spectral cry as it fully appeared. A system notification confirmed he had successfully activated the skill. The young master looked drained but determined after completing the spell. The undead horse, now fully formed with glowing blue flame on its mane, stood still. The system confirmed that his pet, Carl, had been revived as an undead. Carl, the newly revived undead horse, opened its glowing eyes. Wiping the blood from his mouth, the young master finally exclaimed, "I did it." Rona looked shocked, calling out for the young master, and then she grabbed his arm tightly. The young master calmly said Carl, then looked down at the horse. The undead Carl appeared, and Rona looked completely flustered, holding on to the young master. System windows displayed Carl's new traits. Basic information: now an undead horse of obsidian with darkness element and the successful removal of the expected death trait. It also noted that the temporary pet would grow 1.5 times faster and that summoning/dispelling the undead would depend on the player's mana. As the young master thought, I succeeded. The young master touched Carl gently and declared, "I'll be your master from now on." He then paused, looking around with a thoughtful expression, wondering about the next step. Rona panicked as the undead horse seemed to react strangely, causing her to stumble back. She was pulled back by the young master, stumbling near the horse. The young master shouted, "Rona!" and then asked her what she thought she was doing. Rona burst into tears again, saying she thought something bad happened to him and questioning how he could use mana so recklessly, scolding Carl as well. The young master just looked at Rona, while Carl looked a bit confused by the outburst. Rona then focused on Carl, crying out, "Carl, I cared for you so much." The young master smiled and told Carl to spit out the carrot he fed him. He then muttered to himself, "All right, let's see." He looked up at the sky, thinking about the next goal, which was the hidden piece. A few days later, the young master was seen sneaking out of the building at night. He was seen leaving the estate, passing by Carl's stable, under the dark, starry sky, hidden by thick leaves. The scene showed a dark forest setting illuminated by the moonlight. The young master, now cloaked in black, held a glowing, luminous stone in one gloved hand. He thought that the path ahead wasn't much different from the game he knew. He placed the item he was carrying into a dark satchel, feeling a sense of relief. He realized he had found the second hidden piece of the Reinhafer family, an item he must obtain. He looked at a glowing purple ring, which was the key to helping compensate for his terminally ill trait. A sudden sound made him look up sharply, startled. He stood silently in the dark woods, gripping his sword, thinking to himself if he was being too sensitive. He then focused on the path ahead, thinking, but he came across a wooden sign in the deep forest. Looking around, he realized this was no longer a game but reality. The sign warned that this was Mia's forest and that young children might get lost and die if they entered, so they should not enter no matter what. He resolved firmly, "I don't want to die a second time."